The night on the colony was cold, colder than usual, and the sky above the settlement was full of dust and smoke from the mining towers. The lamps on the streets flickered weakly, showing cracked walls and broken signs. The colony was not a place of comfort, it was a place of survival. In the shadows of those streets walked an alien widow, her steps slow, her clothes torn, her arms thin. She carried nothing but the heavy weight of hunger. At her side, her little daughter stumbled, too weak to walk properly. Her eyes were big. Her cheeks hollow, she clung to her mother's hand with trembling fingers. The widow had once been proud. She had once lived in a bright home with her husband, but war had taken him, and with his death came shame and hunger. In the colony, widows like her were seen as a burden. They were ignored, hated, and cast aside. She had begged for work, but no one gave it to her. She had begged for food, but doors closed in her face. Tonight was no different. She knocked on a door where the smell of bread drifted out. The door opened for a second. A man looked at her with disgust, then shut the door hard. The slam echoed in the street like a cruel laugh. The little girl whispered, "Mama, I am so hungry." The widow's throat tightened. She pressed her daughter close, wishing she could give her food. She would give her own flesh if it would stop the hunger. Her eyes moved from house to house, but she knew no door would open, not for them. Then, in the distance, she saw something. A small house. Warm light shining through the window. The smell of soup, thick and rich, floated in the air. Her stomach turned painfully. Her daughter lifted her face, smelling it too. They walked closer, hearts pounding. The house was different from the others. It was not grand, but it was clean and cared for. In the window, a small figure appeared. It was a little human girl. She had round cheeks and dark hair. She was setting bowls on a table inside. The widow stopped, fear and hope fighting in her chest. Humans were not always kind. Some were harsh. Some ignored aliens completely. But something about the light of that house pulled her forward. Her daughter tugged at her sleeve and whispered, "Mama, maybe they will help." The widow's eyes filled with tears. She wanted to believe it, but her heart carried too many scars. Still, hunger pushed her feet forward. She raised a shaking hand and knocked on the wooden door. For a long moment, there was silence. She thought no one would answer. She thought they would be ignored again. But then the door creaked open, and the little human girl stood there. Her big eyes blinked as she looked at the alien widow and her child. The widow lowered her gaze. "Please, my daughter. She is hungry." Her voice cracked, almost lost. The little girl looked back into the house, then back at the widow. She did not scream. She did not slam the door. Instead, she tilted her head curiously, and then she said something that made the widow freeze. "Why don't you marry my dad?" The little human girl said. "Then you can eat with us every day." The widow gasped, her lips parting. She thought she had heard wrong. Her daughter's eyes widened too. Both of them stood silent, shocked by the innocent words. Before she could respond, heavy footsteps came from inside. A tall figure appeared. It was the human father. His hands were rough from work, his eyes tired. He looked at his daughter first, then at the widow and her child standing weakly in the cold. The widow's heart raced, fear filled her. Would he be angry? Would he throw them out? She wanted to run, but her daughter held her hand too tightly. The man's eyes softened when he saw the child's sunken cheeks. He didn't say anything for a while. The silence was heavy. Then he spoke, his voice deep but calm. "Come in, just for tonight." The widow's knees weakened. She almost collapsed. Her daughter looked at her with sudden joy. The widow nodded slowly, unable to find words. She stepped into the warm house. The smell of soup surrounded her, making her dizzy. The little girl smiled wide, running to fetch bowls. The man pulled out a chair for the widow and her child. The warmth of the fire touched their cold skin. For the first time in months, the widow felt the sting of hope, but deep inside her heart trembled. She knew nothing in this world came free, not in the colony. She feared what tomorrow would bring. She feared what the man would expect, and what the colony would say. Yet as her daughter's hands wrapped around the warm bowl, as she took the first sip of soup with tears in her eyes, the widow whispered inside her heart, Tonight my child will not go to sleep hungry. And somewhere deep inside she also whispered another thought she could not stop. What did that little girl mean? Marry my dad. The fire crackled softly in the small human home, filling the room with warmth. The alien widow sat stiffly on the chair, her daughter beside her. Both held steaming bowls of soup, their thin fingers gripping the spoons as if afraid the food would vanish. The smell of meat and herbs wrapped around them like a dream. The little human girl sat across the table, smiling. Brightly, she watched the alien child eat hungrily, spoon after spoon. Her innocent laughter filled the room, a sound the widow had not heard in so long. For a moment, the hunger, the shame, the cold, all of it seemed far away. But then the memory of those words returned. The little girl's voice echoed in her mind. Why don't you marry my dad? Then you can eat with us every day. The widow's chest tightened, her face flushed with shame. How could a child speak such a thing? The man, the human father, sat at the head of the table. He ate quietly, his eyes heavy from work. His hands bore cuts and calluses, the marks of hard labor. He looked at the widow now and then, but he said nothing. The silence pressed on her shoulders. Finally, the widow lowered her spoon, her voice shook. Your daughter, she said something strange at the door. She could not bring herself to repeat the words. Her cheeks burned. The man raised his eyes to his daughter. What did you say, Anna? The little girl grinned as if she had done nothing wrong. I told her to marry you, Dad. Then she and her daughter can stay with us and eat. They look so hungry. The widow froze. Her heart pounded painfully. Her daughter looked down, cheeks red, too shy to meet anyone's eyes. The man sighed, rubbing his forehead. Anna, you can't just say things like that. But why not? Anna asked, her voice clear and innocent. You always say Mom wanted us to be kind. You always say we should help people. Isn't this helping? The widow's throat tightened. She felt tears rising but forced them back. The child's words, though innocent, had cut deep into her soul. To be offered a place at a table, a family, even as a joke, was something she thought she could never have again. The human man looked at her, his eyes calm but firm. Please don't take offense, he said quietly. Children, they speak from the heart. She meant no harm. The widow nodded quickly, staring into her bowl. I understand, she whispered. Her voice was faint, her hands shook. She did not know if she should feel grateful or humiliated. Her daughter, too young to understand the weight of those words, whispered softly, Mama, can we really stay? The widow placed her hand on her daughter's, her heart breaking. She could not answer. The man stood and began clearing the dishes, his movements steady. He had done this routine many times before, living alone with his child. The widow watched him quietly. Something about the way he cared for his daughter, the way he moved with patience and tired strength. It made her chest ache in a way she had forgotten. But outside the window, shadows moved, neighbors passing by, curious eyes peeking in. The colony was not a kind place. People talked, and rumors grew like fire. Already whispers had begun. Two aliens sitting at a human's table, eating his food. The widow felt the weight of those unseen stares pressing against her back. She knew the colony would not forgive this. Humans were not supposed to share their tables with alien widows. She shifted uncomfortably. We should go, she said suddenly. Pushing back her chair, fear rose inside her. Fear of kindness, fear of punishment. But the man's voice stopped her, firm yet gentle. It's late. The streets are not safe at night. Stay until morning. The widow froze again. Her daughter looked at her with pleading eyes. The child's lips trembled. Please, Mama, just tonight. The widow's resistance crumbled. She sat back down, her heart heavy with conflict. Gratitude burned in her chest, but so did fear. Anna, the little girl, clapped her hands happily. See, Dad, they can stay. Maybe tomorrow you can even show them the garden. The widow blinked. Garden? She whispered. The man nodded. Behind the house I grow a few things, not much but enough. Her heart twisted. She had not seen a green plant in so long, not since before the war took her husband. The idea of a garden, even a small one, felt like a piece of another life. As the night grew deeper, the house grew quiet. The widow lay on a small mat near the fire, her daughter curled against her, the warmth of the flames wrapped around them, a luxury they had not felt in years, but her mind would not rest. She stared into the fire, replaying the little girl's words over and over. "Marry my dad. Then you can eat with us every day." It was a child's innocence, yet it opened a door in her heart she thought was sealed forever. She whispered to herself, so soft no one could hear. Why would he ever want someone like me? Her daughter stirred in her sleep. Pressing closer, the widow kissed her forehead. Tears slid down her cheeks as she thought, for her sake, maybe I should hope again. But outside, in the dark colony streets, eyes still watched the house and whispers turned sharper. By morning, the whole settlement would know what happened tonight. The little girl's words had already started a fire that could not be undone. Morning. Light slipped through the cracks of the wooden shutters, painting the little house in pale gold. The alien widow opened her eyes slowly. Her daughter still slept beside her on the mat. Breathing softly for the first time in months, the child's face looked peaceful, not twisted with hunger or cold. The widow sat up, her body sore from the hard floor, but her heart felt lighter. She could still smell the warmth of last night's soup in the air. The taste lingered on her tongue. It had been so long since she had eaten until she was full. In the kitchen, the human man was already awake. He worked silently, preparing bread and pouring water into cups. His daughter hummed as she placed plates on the table. Her cheerful voice filled the house like birdsong. The widow hesitated. She wanted to leave before trouble came. She wanted to thank him and go back to her empty corner of the colony. But her daughter stirred, sat up, and rubbed her eyes. "Mama, are we staying?" she asked softly. Hope flickered in her voice. The widow's chest ached. She could not crush that hope, not yet. "Just for breakfast," she whispered. They joined the table once more. This time the widow ate slowly, trying to hide her hunger. But her daughter ate eagerly, crumbs clinging to her small lips. The human girl laughed, handing her more bread. "Eat, you're too thin," she said brightly. The widow's eyes stung with tears. No one had spoken to her with such simple kindness in years. The man broke the silence at last. "You can stay until you find work." His voice was steady, not soft, not harsh, simply matter of fact. The widow froze. "Work?" she asked quietly. He nodded. "The colony has jobs no one wants, cleaning, hauling, simple tasks. It's not much, but it will give you credits. Until then, you can sleep here, your daughter too." The widow lowered her eyes. Her hands trembled. Gratitude battled with shame inside her. "Why would you help us?" she whispered. He looked at his daughter, who was feeding the alien child another slice of bread. His face softened. "Because I promised her mother I'd raise her to be kind." The widow could not speak. Her throat closed. She bowed her head, silent tears sliding down her face, but outside, whispers had already begun to spread. By midday, neighbors passed by the house, slowing their steps, throwing sharp glances at the door. A merchant woman hissed, "He lets aliens eat at his table."
"Can you believe it?"
Another muttered, "Shameful. He'll ruin himself for that widow." The words stung like knives, though the widow tried to ignore them. She could see the man's shoulders stiffen as he worked outside, cutting wood. He had heard the gossip, too. Later, as they shared another small meal, the door suddenly shook with loud knocks. The widow startled, clutching her daughter close. The man stood, opening the door with calm eyes. 3 colony workers stood there, men with hard faces. Their leader sneered, "Is it true you're feeding that alien widow?" The man didn't flinch. "She and her child were starving. I gave them food, that's all." "That's all?" the man spat. You shame our kind. Humans barely survive here and you waste food on them. The widow's heart pounded. She wanted to run, she wanted to grab her daughter and disappear into the night, but the man stood tall, blocking the door. What I do in my own house is my choice, he said firmly. The workers growled, one spitting on the ground. If you keep her here, you'll regret it. Then they turned and stormed off. Their angry voices echoed down the street, carrying the news further. The widow sank into her chair, trembling. You should not risk yourself for us, she whispered, her voice cracked with guilt. The man closed the door and looked at her, his eyes steady. I already told you, this is my house. No one else decides what happens here. The little girl, Anna, reached across the table and grabbed the widow's daughter's hand. Don't worry, you can stay with us. You're family now. The widow's heart twisted painfully. Family. The word felt too heavy, too precious. But when she saw her daughter smile for the first time in months, she could not bring herself to deny it. That night they shared a simple stew together, all four sitting around the small wooden table. The fire glowed warmly, casting shadows on the walls. The widow listened to the sound of children's laughter, something she thought she would never hear again, but she also knew the colony would not forgive this kindness, not easily. Already the whispers were turning into threats. She could feel the storm coming closer with every passing hour, and yet as her daughter fell asleep with a full belly, resting in Anna's arms, the widow whispered in her heart, even if it is only for one more day, tonight my child has a family. The next morning, the air outside the little human house felt heavy. Dark clouds gathered over the colony. The streets were already buzzing with voices, rumors spreading like fire. Everywhere, people whispered about the human who gave food to an alien widow. The widow stepped outside quietly, carrying a small pot of water to wash her daughter's face. She kept her head low, but she could feel the stares stabbing into her back. A group of women carrying baskets stopped walking when they saw her. They whispered loudly enough for her to hear. Look at her, shameless, begging at his table, one said. She will bring curses to his house. Another hissed. She should have starved like the rest of her kind. The third muttered. The widow's cheeks burned. Her daughter clung to her arm, frightened by the harsh voices. She hurried back inside, closing the door behind her. Her heart pounded. The human man was repairing tools by the table. He looked up and saw her pale face. He didn't need to ask what happened. His jaw tightened. They will talk, he said calmly. Let them. Words cannot hurt us. But the widow knew better. In the colony, words could kill. Words turned neighbors into enemies, and enemies brought real danger. By midday, the first stones hit the house. One cracked against the wall. Another rolled across the floor. The children screamed. The widow pulled them close, trembling. The man stood and opened the door. His eyes burned with anger. Outside, 3 boys laughed cruelly, their pockets full of rocks. They froze when they saw his towering figure. His voice thundered, "If I see you throw another stone at my house, you'll answer to me." The boys scattered, running down the street, but their laughter still echoed. That evening, the widow tried to convince him. "You must send us away," she whispered. "They will not stop. They will turn against you. You have your daughter to protect." The man shook his head. "And what of your daughter? Do you want her to starve again in the cold?" The widow's lips trembled. She wanted to argue, but his words struck too deep. She had no answer. Later that night, as the children slept near the fire, the widow and the man sat across from each other, silence filling the room. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft. "Why do you care? We are nothing to you." The man leaned back, staring into the flames. His face was tired but steady. "Because once, long ago, someone cared for me when I had nothing. A stranger gave me bread when I was starving that saved my life. If I turn away from you now, what kind of man would I be?" The widow lowered her head. Her chest tightened with emotions she could not name. She whispered, "You will suffer because of us." His eyes met hers, strong and unshaken. "Then let me suffer with honor." Before she could answer, a loud knock shook the door. The man stood, his hand instinctively reaching for the axe by the wall. He opened the door carefully. 4 colony enforcers stood outside, wearing dark coats marked with the symbol of the settlement. Their leader, a broad man with sharp eyes, stepped forward. "We've heard reports," he said coldly. "You are sheltering an alien widow, is this true?" The man's jaw tightened. "It is true," he said, not flinching. The enforcer sneered. "Do you understand the rules? Aliens like her are not welcome here. They spread trouble, disease, division. If you keep her, you defy the colony's law." The widow stepped forward, trembling. "Please, do not punish him. It was my fault. I knocked on his door. I will leave." But before she could step out, the man's arm blocked her. His voice was like iron. "She stays. She has done nothing wrong. Neither has her child." The enforcer's eyes narrowed. "You risk your place in this colony. You risk your daughter's safety. Think carefully." The man's grip on the axe tightened. His voice was calm but deadly. "I have thought carefully. Now leave." For a tense moment, no one moved. The air was thick with danger. Then the enforcer spat on the ground and turned sharply. "This isn't over," he growled. "You'll regret this choice." The group walked away, their boots heavy on the dirt. The widow sank to her knees, shaking. "You have made enemies now. Because of me." The man closed the door and leaned the axe back against the wall. His face was calm, but his eyes carried storm. "Enemies?" he said. "They were never friends to begin with." The widow looked at him, her heart racing. She had never seen such defiance, such quiet strength. Her husband had once been brave like this before the Empire took him away. For the first time, she felt something stir inside her. Something more than fear. Something dangerously close to hope. That night, as the children slept, the widow lay, awake, listening to the man's steady breathing across the room. She thought of the enforcer's threats, of the colony's cruel eyes. She knew the storm was coming closer. But she also thought of his words, "Let me suffer with honor." For the first time in years, the widow wondered if perhaps she was not as alone as she believed. The days after the enforcer's visit grew heavy with silence. The little human house still glowed with warmth inside, but outside the colony's eyes burned with cold hatred. Merchants stopped speaking to the man. Work offers disappeared. Tools he had ordered never arrived. When he went to the supply depot, they turned him away, muttering, "Feed your alien friends instead." The widow saw it all. She saw the shelves grow emptier, the food stores shrinking. She saw the man's back bent lower each night as he returned home with almost nothing. And her heart ached because she knew this was her fault. One night she tried to speak. "You must let us go," she whispered. "The colony is punishing you because of us. Your daughter will suffer." The man sat by the fire, sharpening his old axe. His hands were steady, his eyes fixed on the blade. "Do you think I am a man who bends to gossip?" he asked quietly. "But it is more than gossip," the widow said desperately. "You are losing everything because you gave us food." He looked up at her. His voice was calm but sharp as steel. "I have lost things before. I will not lose myself." The widow turned away, tears filling her eyes. She thought of leaving at night, slipping away with her daughter, sparing him from further loss. But when she looked at her child, sleeping safely, cheeks no longer hollow, with hunger, she could not bear it. The next morning, the man took the widow with him to the outer fields. There, on the edge of the colony, the soil was hard and dry, but small patches of green pushed through. He knelt down, his hands sinking into the earth. "This is where I grow what little we have left," he said. "If we want to survive, we work together." The widow dropped to her knees beside him, her hands trembling as she touched the soil. She had not worked a garden since before the war. Memories rose of her husband, of laughter, of better days. Her throat tightened, but she nodded. "I will work." Together they labored, hour after hour, digging, planting, watering the fragile plants. The sun burned hot on their backs, sweat mixed with dirt on their skin. For the first time, the widow felt her strength. Return not from food but from purpose. When they returned to the house, both were exhausted, but there was pride in their eyes. The children clapped their hands at the sight of a basket of herbs and roots. It was not much, but it was hope, yet hope came with a price. That evening, as the fire warmed the small room, the man's daughter asked innocently, "Papa, why don't the other people like them?" The widow froze, shame flooding her. But the man answered gently, "Because people fear what they don't understand. Fear makes them cruel." Anna tilted her head. "But Mama always said kindness is stronger than fear." The widow's eyes stung. She looked at the little girl, and for a moment she wished she could truly belong to this house, to this family, but the colony was not done with them. The next day, the enforcers returned, this time with more men. They did not knock. They barged in. Their leader's voice was sharp. "The council has decided. The widow must leave this colony. At once, if she does not, you will lose your work, your supplies, even your house." The man stood tall, his jaw tight. "She has a child. Where will they go?" The enforcer sneered. "Not our problem. Send her out or pay the price." The widow stepped forward, her chest heavy with dread. "Enough," she whispered. "I cannot let you suffer more. We will leave." Her daughter clutched her skirt, crying, "Mama, no." The human girl shouted too. "No, they stay. You can't take them." The man raised his hand, silencing the room. His voice was low but fierce. "No one is leaving, not while I draw breath." The enforcer's eyes darkened, but he smirked. "Then prepare to starve," he said before slamming the door and walking away. That night the house was quiet. The children slept. But the widow and the man sat awake by the fire. The shadows flickered across their tired faces. The widow spoke softly. "You are risking your daughter's life for us. I cannot let that happen. Tomorrow, I will go." The man turned sharply, his eyes blazing. "And what will you do? Starve in the alleys again? Watch your child die in your arms? No, you will stay. We will fight this together." His words hit her like a storm. Her lips parted, but no words came. She had never heard such conviction, not since her husband's last stand. The widow felt a strange warmth bloom inside her chest, something dangerous, something she had sworn never to feel again. Trust. But as she lay down that night, listening to the steady breath of the children, she whispered silently, "If sacrifice is needed, let it be mine, not his." The days dragged on. Each sunrise brought more struggle. The colony's hatred grew louder. Stones struck the windows. Insults were shouted from the street. Work remained scarce and food ran low. Yet inside the little house, the fire still burned. The widow worked beside the man in the small garden, her hands raw and blistered, her back aching. But she said nothing. Her daughter laughed with Anna, chasing shadows across the yard. Their laughter was the only light in a dark world. One evening, after another long day, the man sat sharpening his axe. His face was worn with worry. The widow watched him from across the room, her heart heavy. She could not keep her secret any longer. She spoke softly, her voice trembling. "Do you know why the colony hates me so much?" The man looked up, his eyes steady. "Because you are an alien widow." She shook her head slowly, her hands twisting in her lap. "It is more than that." Her voice cracked. "My husband, he was not just a miner, he was a leader. When the Empire soldiers came, he fought them, he led others to resist." The man frowned, setting the axe aside. "And?" Her throat tightened. "They killed him in front of me, they made me watch, then they called me cursed. They said his rebellion was my fault, that I had poisoned him with pride. The colony believed them. They turned their backs on me. I became nothing." Tears rolled down her face as the words spilled out. "For years I carried that shame. I believed their lies. I thought I had brought ruin on my husband, on my people. I thought I did not deserve to live." The man's jaw tightened. His voice was low but firm. "You are not cursed." She looked up sharply, her eyes wet. "But everyone—" He cut her off, his voice rising. "Everyone is wrong. A man chooses to fight. No one forces courage into his heart. He resisted because he believed it was right. That is honor, not shame." The widow's breath caught, Her heart pounded. For so long she had carried the weight of guilt. For so long she had believed the lies. Now, hearing his words, something broke inside her. A wall she had built to survive. Her shoulders shook. She buried her face in her hands, sobbing. All this time I thought I was the reason he died. The man stood and crossed the room. He knelt before her, his hand resting gently on her trembling arm. His voice softened. No, you are the reason. His courage lives on. Because you are still here, because you still fight to keep your daughter alive. The widow lifted her tear-stained face. His eyes were close, steady, burning with a fire she had not seen in years. For a moment she felt her breath stop. Their silence was broken by Anna's small voice. Papa? She stood sleepily in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. Her little alien friend clung to her hand. Why is she crying? The widow wiped her face quickly, forcing a smile. Just remembering, she whispered. The man rose and tucked his daughter back into bed, but when he returned, his eyes never left the widow's face. She felt the warmth of his gaze, and for the first time since her husband's death, she did not feel like a shadow. She felt seen. The next day, the colony's threats grew stronger. A notice was nailed to the man's door, written in harsh letters. Cast out the alien, or starve with her. The widow's hands shook as she read it. Her daughter clung to her skirt, frightened. She turned to the man, her voice breaking. I cannot let you suffer more. You will lose everything. The man tore the notice down and threw it into the fire, his voice steady as stone. Let them come, I will not bow. The widow stared at him, her chest burning. She remembered her husband standing tall against the Empire soldiers. She remembered his last breath of defiance. And now she saw the same fire in this human man. That night, as the children slept, she whispered to him, If they come for us, if they take me away, promise me you will keep my daughter safe. His eyes locked with hers, fierce and unyielding. No, he said, I will not promise that, because I will not let them take you. Her breath caught. Her heart raced. She looked away, afraid he would see the storm of emotions inside her. Gratitude, fear, and something deeper, something she dared not name. But when she lay down beside her daughter, she whispered in her heart, Perhaps my husband's courage did not die with him. Perhaps it lives again in this man. The morning sun rose weak and pale, casting long shadows across the colony. The human man stepped outside, axe in hand. His eyes scanned the street. He knew they would come soon. The threats had grown sharper each day, and now the whole settlement buzzed with anger. Inside the house, the alien widow packed what little she had, torn cloth, a blanket, nothing more. Her daughter clung to her hand, whispering, Mama, don't leave. The widow's heart cracked with every word. She wanted to stay, but she could not bear to see the man lose everything for her sake. The door shook suddenly, loud fists pounding against the wood. The children screamed. The man pushed them back and opened the door. This time it was not just enforcers. It was the council themselves, a group of grim men and women. Their leader's voice was cold. This is your last chance. Cast out the alien widow and her child, or you and your daughter will be banished from the colony. The widow stepped forward quickly, her hands raised. Please don't punish him. I will leave now. Just spare his family. But the man's voice thundered, stopping her. No. His body blocked the doorway, his axe gleaming in the morning light. She and her child stay. If you want them gone, you will go through me. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Whispers turned into shouts. Some called him a traitor. Others cursed the widow's name. The council leader sneered. You would throw away your life, your daughter's future, for a cursed alien? The man's voice was iron. She is not cursed. She is a mother fighting for her child. And if that makes her guilty, then I am guilty too. The widow's breath caught. Her chest burned. For the first time, someone had spoken for her. Not as a burden, not as a curse, but as a person. The crowd pressed closer, anger rising like a wave. Stones flew at the house, one smashing the window, another hit the man's shoulder, but he stood unshaken. Suddenly, Anna's small voice pierced the chaos. She stepped into the doorway, clutching the alien girl's hand. Her eyes shone with tears as she shouted, "Stop it, she's my family too." The crowd went silent, shocked. The two children stood together, hand in hand, their faces innocent yet unbroken. The widow fell to her knees. Tears streaming down her face, her daughter whispered, "Mama, see? We're family now." The council leader's face twisted with rage, but the crowd began to stir uneasily. Some lowered their stones, some looked away. No one had expected such defiance, not from a child, not from a man who had always kept to himself. The man raised his voice one last time. "I will not abandon them. If you wish to cast me out, then I will leave this colony forever. But I will not betray my honor." The silence stretched. Then slowly, one by one, the people turned and walked away. Their anger had no power against the sight of children holding hands, against the strength of one man's voice. The council, seeing the crowd break, could do nothing. With bitter glares, they left as well. When the door closed, the widow collapsed. Shaking, she looked up at the man, her voice breaking. "Why? Why do you risk everything for us?" He set the axe aside and knelt before her, his voice low but steady. "Because no one should face the world alone. Not you, not your daughter." Her tears flowed freely. She reached for his hand, trembling. "I have nothing to give you. But..." Before he could answer, Anna laughed softly, pulling the alien girl close. "That's not true. She already gave us family." The widow's heart stopped. The words cut through her like light through darkness. Family. For so long she had been alone. For so long she had believed she was cursed, unwanted, forgotten. Now, in this small house, with these two children and this one stubborn man, she felt something she thought was gone forever. Belonging. She looked into his eyes, her voice barely a whisper. "Then, let me stay. Not as a guest, not as a burden, but as part of this house." The man's lips curved into the smallest of smiles, his voice gentle. "Then stay." The children clapped and laughed. Anna shouted with joy, "See, Papa, now she can marry you for real." The widow flushed, her cheeks burning, but she did not look away this time. For once the words did not sting. They warmed her. They felt like a promise. That night the house was filled with more than firelight. It was filled with hope. The widow sat by the fire with the man, their daughters curled together, sleeping peacefully. Outside, the colony still whispered, still judged. But inside, a new family had been born. And as the stars lit the sky above, the widow whispered in her heart, "Once I was cursed and alone, but now I am home."